when the defendant provokes the incident, he loses the right to self-defense. You cannot claim self-defense against a danger you create. That's critical right here. If you're the one who is threatening others, you lose the right to claim self-defense.
Joining me now from bearingarms.com, my friend Cam Edwards. Cam, it's been bizarre. I'm certainly not a lawyer by any stretch of the imagination, but I do know my eyes and ears tell me the prosecution in this case he's an idiot. How did that happen?
It's a really good question. And I don't know if he's an idiot or if he is just willing to use any argument possible in order to try to obtain a conviction, even if he has to misrepresent what the law of self-defense actually is, and it's good to be here, Jesse, because not only did Thomas Binger say, listen, I mean, if you provoke an attack, you lose your right of self-defense, which actually is not even the case under Wisconsin law. If you provoke an attack, you have to retreat before you can use reasonable force to defend yourself. But there's no evidence other than these, blurry, grainy photos that Rittenhouse actually provoked anyone that night. In fact, there was plenty of testimony over the course of this trial that Rittenhouse tried to de-escalate tense situations at time. But, we saw the prosecution argue that if you bring a gun to a fist fight, that you can't act in self-defense, that everybody just needs to take a beating sometimes. I mean, this was an absurd take on our right of self-defense. And thank goodness Thomas Binger isn't writing the laws. It's just a shame that he's out there trying to enforce the laws that are on the books, because at least stuff like this.
Cam, help me understand how this even gets to trial. I mean, I know I'm not a lawyer, but it's not only that all these things took place, they're all on videotape. I mean, you can go on Twitter right now and look at the evidence. It's that crazy. You can look at all this. It's on video. He's defending himself. And yet, as we speak right now, the jury is deliberating about sending this kid to prison for the rest of his life. How did it get this far?
Well, I think that Kyle Rittenhouse's attorney, Mark Richards, summed it up in his closing argument. I mean, he basically said, look, this was a politically motivated decision to charge Kyle Rittenhouse. And it was done about 2 days after the shootings took place, long before the investigations had ever been concluded, long before witnesses had been interviewed, well before the prosecution or even police had the opportunity to view some of these videos, including the drone footage that, is at the heart of the prosecution's case. The decision was made to charge Kyle Rittenhouse with first-degree murder before any of that information had been obtained, before the investigation had ever been concluded. So you ask how we got here. I think we got here with, as Mark Richards said, a rush to judgment on the part of prosecutors who wanted to send a message that, the things were going to be calm in Kenosha. We weren't going to put up with this type of violence. And it didn't matter if it was self-defense or not. What mattered was sending the message that Kenosha was not a place where this type of behavior was going to be acceptable. The question then became, again, what was this behavior? Was it murder or was it self-defense?
And I love all the lawyering I've seen from the communists out there in recent days, Cam. I particularly love this one. This is in August 2020, a fact check from PolitiFact, which I just love the name of that. It's just wonderful. It said a Facebook post says, at 17 years old, Rittenhouse was perfectly legal to be able to possess that rifle without parental supervision. That's false. Cam, was it illegal for Kyle Rittenhouse to have an AR-15?
Well, as that little editor's note you just scrolled by notes, not according to the judge in this case. The judge took a look at this Wisconsin law in question. And look, admittedly, the law is really confusing. But it was just as confusing for PolitiFact a year ago, right? And yet they supposedly came to the determination that, no, of course he wasn't allowed to carry that gun. Well, actually, according to Bruce Schroeder, based on the Wisconsin law in question, if the gun was not a short-barreled rifle, then, yeah, Kyle Rittenhouse was legally allowed as a 17-year-old to possess that firearm, which is why the gun possession charge was dropped. Now, you don't have to like the law. You can say the law was, poorly worded and the legislators actually meant something else. But look, that's the way the law is written. And so Kyle Rittenhouse is not facing a illegal gun possession charge. The charge of violating curfew is dropped. He had a right to be in Kenosha that night. He had a right to have a rifle with him that night. Those points are not in dispute from a legal standpoint anymore.
Cam, but he crossed state lines. Haven't you heard?
Yeah, but not with a rifle, right? Because the rifle was in the possession of Dominic Black the entire time. So Kyle Rittenhouse drove, 17 miles from Antioch, Illinois to Kenosha, Wisconsin. Well, I don't know about you, Jesse. A lot of folks have at least that long of a commute to work every day. And they don't consider themselves to be outsiders when they're driving from where they live to where they go to work. Kyle Rittenhouse did work in Kenosha. He had friends in Kenosha. His father lived in Kenosha. But that was one of the other, sort of prosecutorial arguments that that Binger tried to make, is that this guy didn't belong here that night, right? He was a stranger. As it turns out, Anthony Huber, I think, actually lived further away from Kenosha than Kyle Rittenhouse did. But prosecution never called him an outsider. It was a lame argument. I didn't like it. I don't know how well it went over among the jurors, but the bottom line is Kyle Rittenhouse had a right to be there. He had a right to have that gun. Those issues aren't in dispute. The question is whether or not he was acting in self-defense. That's what this case is all about.
Cam, explain this to me, please. Why, on a macro level, why is there so much anger at somebody who stopped the insanity, at least temporarily, from last summer, and virtually no anger from the mainstream media at the animals who were torching American cities? It's so bizarre who they've chosen to defend and who they've chosen to demonize.
It really is. And even, this week we've seen, I counted a half dozen stories, there might be more of them out there. I counted a half dozen columns, generally along the lines of Kyle Rittenhouse is no hero. He might have acted in self-defense, but he's no hero. Okay, look, if you want to believe that, that's your opinion, fine. But you're right, Jesse. Why are we talking about, well, Kyle Rittenhouse may have acted in self-defense, but he shouldn't have been there? Why is nobody saying Kenosha shouldn't have been burning? That Kyle Rittenhouse wouldn't have been there if you didn't have people who were trying to kick off a revolution, to ignite this revolutionary fire by burning Kenosha to the ground. That's why Kyle Rittenhouse was there. That's why Ryan Balch was there. That's why you had dozens, if not hundreds, of individuals who were Kenosha residents or who lived nearby, who came to that city to stand guard over businesses, to watch over, the livelihoods for people who were getting ready to lose everything if the mob decided that their business shouldn't be allowed to exist. And you're right. We're not talking about that. The media isn't interested in having that conversation. Apparently, the leftist guide to riot response is stay home, don't set foot off your property, particularly if the mob is telling you not to. Don't have a firearm. Allow yourself to be beaten if you're attacked. And that's how you're supposed to respond. Well, I don't think that's how Americans respond to situations like that. We certainly haven't seen that in the past. I don't think we're going to see that in the future. We care about our businesses. We care about our communities. And yeah, I think that you've got millions of Americans who are prepared to defend their neighborhoods, their communities, their cities, rather than see them torched and burned to the ground.
Hey, thanks so much for watching The First on YouTube. If you liked what you saw, go ahead and like and subscribe. You heard me. Like it, subscribe. You'll get a lot more of it and a lot more of me.